There's competition, just like everything else.
So how long did it take for you to knock to get your first? Everything is never as easy as it seems.
Yes.
People always say, if I would have known what I didn't know, I probably wouldn't have got into it in the first place.
The grass is always greener doing something else.
You're making great money.
We always like to look at different exit strategies. It's a big follow-up game on a lot of them. I mean, we're happy to partner with people. It's just, we got to see if the deal's worth it. Door knocking is free and still gets the best deals. I started investing myself. I just listen to podcasts. I was always, your guys' podcast was the first thing I ever listened to starting out.
We did a really good job not making this a 30-minute infomercial for you. I think we provided some really good value. What up, D2D world? JP here with Ben Jensen. Ben, glad you came in today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Ben, I think I might have clothing older than you are, so I'm going to have I'm going to have you introduce yourself to the world, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you're in with us on the podcast today.
I'd like to see that clothing, but yeah. I'm 24 years old. I just started in door-to-door when I was a junior in college. So I started in alarms at Vivint, did a year at Solar after I graduated, and now a full-time real estate investor, run a wholesale operation with my brother. And I don't really like to say wholesale because it's a real estate investing business, because we do, wholesaling, flipping. We buy a lot of rental properties, so creative finance, everything in between.
Awesome. So we're starting to bring people in who have been in the industry. I mean, I get phone calls every day. So does Sam about, hey, I've been knocking doors for 15 years, 20 years. I'm a lifer here. What are the other opportunities that are out there? And, it's usually like, I got to get off the doors, or it's got to stop traveling. But what it really is, in my opinion, is it's not what they don't want. It's what they do want. They want control. They want opportunity to own something, opportunity to, maybe, you mentioned solar. Solar is kind of a nightmare right now. The strong will survive. It's a great industry. I know a lot of friends that are in that industry. But for those who aren't top 5%, they're struggling, and they're going to struggle. And so they're looking on ways to utilize their skill set. And so it's great to have somebody in who's found a way to take that skill set and then own it. So let's talk about real estate investing. Most people probably understand the power of real estate and compounding money and using the bank's money to grow your own portfolio, et cetera. But you have the way you started was unique. You told me earlier that you started with pre-foreclosed homes. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Well, the beginning was your first home after knocking, right?
Yes, yeah. So just the idea of wanting to get into real estate, I got, recruited because I saw the regionals that were doing all the real estate investing, and I was like, if I can get enough money to get my first down payment, that'd be awesome. I didn't know what it'd turn into.
Let's give a shout out, right? We got Jay-Z, we got Matt Franken, we got Cheyenne Thatcher,
Adam Nelson. Yeah, that was the one that I was a full
and Braun, right? They're all over social media right now.
I was a full on recruiter.
Braun and Adam, we should get you guys on the D2D podcast.
Yeah. So shout out to them, because they are all huge real estate guys, and I saw what they were doing, and found Adam through, I think it was TikTok or Instagram, which is crazy, and dropped the old internship I was supposed to do, went out and knocked doors, and then met, Matt, who's doing all the real estate stuff. So it was really inspiring to see, managers that were like putting that to work, which was cool. That's kind of how it started with me. So that's how I bought my first property.
Tell us about the first one.
So I finished at Vivint my junior year. So I guess I was 21 going into 22. And
shout out to the alma mater. Where were you going to school?
University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yep, Boomer Sooner. So we'll first football game starting up soon. So this was kind of how it ties together with the real estate too. So I've had that property as an Airbnb for the last 2 years now, I guess, almost a little over that. And it kills it. I mean, people come in, pay big money for football, graduations, everything. It's, a cheap house, cheap real estate, but I had to do it the conventional route. So I made a bunch of money, knocking for Vivint. My whole goal was to buy a property. So once I got back to school, I was just like, it didn't feel real, making almost 6 figures in a summer. And then I figured out, okay, I need to make this happen, got pre-qualified. I didn't have any credit or work history, so I had to co-sign with a family member. And then it was right when the interest rates were low, the market was crazy. Stuff was leaving the shelf after like a day. So I ended up getting one under contract. It was in pretty good shape already.
Standard MLS listing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I reached out to a realtor that was investor friendly, and just from like a Bigger Pockets website. And I told him what I was looking for. He would send it to me every day. And like, I had to put an offer in that day or else it'd be gone. And I started looking right around campus in Norman and just found one that was a little overpriced for the size and put a lower offer in actually. And they countered, and I got it under contract. So it was supposed to be, I was, be living in there with some friends, and then ended up moving to Dallas after I graduated, made it Airbnb. And it's just killed it ever since.
Nice. Okay. So then you go out, I think you said you went out and knocked solar.
Yep.
Shout out to
Jay-Z. We got...
But you can shout out the company.
Legacy.
What's
yeah,
up,
Legacy Power. A ton of good guys. I mean, we were with, Luke and Doug are the, CEOs, great dudes over there. And Jay-Z went over with a lot of our team, and Chris, like there's a lot of guys that trained us a ton. So
yeah, I'd like to get Luke or Doug in here for a D2D podcast. Let's go on that. All right. So you go out, knock with Legacy, and then you come back and you want to buy another property. What happens?
The interest, the market shifted dramatically. So, the solar was great. We had the 1.99 interest rate. We saw it happen with solar too, which was cool because we were always taught to sell with that urgency. And then sure enough, it happened with the interest rates going up, but did really well. Went to go do the same thing. I was like, I'll put 5% down on a property in Texas, try to house hack it, rent out the other rooms. And the rate was 7%. The cash flow on it, if you rented it out after I left, was negative $300 a month. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And that's when I started figuring out there was other ways to scale, because I saw people buying properties all over. But I'm like, how do they do it if you're, having to get a bank loan every time, or if you have to come up with a large down payment? So that's when I got into what we're doing now.
So what did you do after that?
I started investing myself. I just listened to podcasts. Your guys' podcast was the first thing I ever listened to starting out. I just typed in door to door right when I was trying to learn Vivint. And it was a huge mindset shift. Every time I'm working out, driving, whatever it was, I was listening to podcasts. So I started doing that with real estate all the time. And it started with bigger pockets. Then it went to like Pace Morby. Then it went to all this other stuff. And I heard that you can, buy properties without having to get a loan, having to go to the bank and just do seller finance or subject to. Didn't really know what it was. And then I just started trickling into more stuff, started investing in some mentorships, some different groups. And that's when I was like, okay, people are knocking pre-foreclosures to get deals. And I was already out knocking solar.
So strategy one was to go knock pre-foreclosures. And so I think anybody who's knocked doors has probably heard of this concept. So where was the first place you went to know where to knock?
Yep. So I actually was in a community. I just saw people were knocking pre-foreclosures. And I pulled up a list I found foreclosure.com, I think, just looked up foreclosures in my county.
You and about a billion other people.
Yeah. And so I started looking at it and I was like, okay, I don't really know exactly what this means. Does a bank own it? Are they about to get foreclosed on? What is pre-foreclosure versus, bank owned, all that stuff. But I just started finding them. I was like, this is right around everywhere I'm knocking in DFW. So I just went and knocked one. And the first door I knocked had a note on the door from another investor. And sure enough, I was like, okay, this is interesting. There's competition, just like everything else. But I just called the number thinking let's see if this guy's legit. Let's see if he knows what he's talking about. And it was a crazy small world. He used to sell for Vivint way back in the day, 30 years ago. And when it was Apex. Yeah. Was from my hometown. His kids went to high school with me. I ended up shadowing him, kind of learning everything he did. And then that's when I really narrowed it down. I was like, okay, I can go to the county site. I can use apps to make this more, quicker, optimize my time, get better, fresher data. And then that's when we started ramping it up, and I got my first couple deals the next.
We'll talk about your first one. So you probably haven't forgot that one. Never will.
Yep.
So how long did it take for you to knock to get your first pre-foreclosed deal?
Probably, I guess it depends, because I started learning about it maybe end of the year in December. Started knocking maybe early January. I was, doing solar blitzes, but I didn't have all my team. All my guys were at OU, so I was kind of waiting for the summer to start. And I was like, I'm just going to hammer out all these ones I can find in this area. And so I knocked for a good month here and there. And then I ran into that guy, shadowed him. And then I was like, okay, this makes a little more sense. Knocked for 2 straight weeks before running into a lead that this guy, just old dude, couldn't catch up his payments. His wife passed away. I think he's $8,000 behind on the mortgage. The house was a wreck. And I didn't know what to do. I just knew he needed help. So I set the other guy to come over there, just like I would with a solar appointment. And he closed it down a lot easier than I was expecting. And we ended up getting under contract at 110, and then found a buyer that was willing to pay 150. And so we didn't have to bring any capital or anything. We just made the $40,000 at the closing table.
Okay.
I split that with them.
So, everything is never as easy as it seems. Yep. So I'm assuming that guy who paid 150 for it was from this other guy's investor network. Mm-hmm. But did you even know you needed an investor network at that point?
No, I didn't know anything. Okay. I just literally was I can go make a friend with someone, explain that they have options, and I'll just set the appointment for this guy.
All right. So you find a place pre-foreclosure, find a guy $8,000 behind on a $110,000 home was probably a year. The bank was letting that go for a while.
It happens. Oh, I've seen $100,000. It's crazy. But yeah, it was probably 6 to 12 months of missed payments.
All right, so you get it under contract, and I'm sure you had a level of excitement. But then you know, what do we do with it? This guy picks up the phone, calls 3 or 4 investors, find the guy willing to pay $150 for it, and you're out and you're splitting the deal with the guy. But when you don't have a network of investors, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, people always say, if I would have known what I didn't know, I probably wouldn't have got into it in the first place, right? Yeah. So that was probably a big learning opportunity for you. So how did you take that first sale and what you learned on it and then go into your second foreclosed deal?
Yep. It was definitely one, I realized the paperwork. I was like, that was the biggest thing I was so worried about. What am I going to do? What am I going to write? He had me fill it out in front of him. It was, you know, there's certain things you want to have on there, but a lot easier than you'd expect. It's more just understanding the situation and having all the pieces to put the deal together. So once I saw that, I had no idea if we were going to make money. This house was like, I thought we were going to, there was no deal. It was $80,000 of repairs. It looked terrible. But if it was fixed up, it was worth, you know, $280,000. So saw him do that, went out and knocked the next one. I saw the paperwork was done, and I realized I got in touch with the other guy that was buying it, right, through that network. And so when I went to the next one, it was just right place, right time. Again, this is not like a, you know, completely, it's a numbers game just like anything else. Like these deals can be good, bad, and a lot of times no one's answering. So It's not super consistent where you can go door to door and just like, I'm going to sell someone. They have to have a problem and be ready to sell. So this one is their parents were about to go into foreclosure. They were going to put them in a nursing home. They couldn't get an offer over what they owed on it. And I was like, well, if I can get you some money, is there any reason you wouldn't sell it? They're like, no. So I walked in. Luckily, the kids were there. Walked in, got pictures, sent it to that guy. He's like, I can do $225. And they had no offers above $180 or $190. So I was like, all right, I'll give you $190, give them $10,000, and then made the deal myself that time.
So talk about that. When you say give them $10,000, right? So you go in, you know, and I will touch on this at some point today, because you're dealing with people that are in bad situations many times, and real jerks, which is not the word I'd use if I wasn't on camera, will take advantage of people in those situations. So when you say give them $10,000, what is that?
So I mean, like to figure out anything is a deal in real estate, it comes down to the numbers. So you have to have the payoff on their loan, right? So they owed $180, but the bank's about to take the house in 2 weeks. So if they get foreclosed on, they're pretty much getting nothing. They're going to have, you know, a foreclosure on their record, and they're going to come take the house. So with them owing $180, they had no other offer for above $180. But with our network, I realized I could get someone to buy it for more. And they're like, if we can just get $10,000 to get, you know, some helping them move over to the nursing home, that would be perfect. So I got them under contract at $190, which nets them $10,000. And then I just assigned it to the buyer at $225.
Right. And so this is very common because people like, where do they go, right? They don't have first or last. They don't have a deposit. They need to get in the nursing home. If they were behind that much in their house, it's not like they have extra cash. So just getting rid of their debt doesn't fix a lot of problems. So do you have a general rule of thumb on how you want to treat people in this transaction? Because again, there's no consumer protection for this. This is just a skilled door knocker taking care of somebody, dealing with somebody that is not skilled. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in this situation, right? Because they could go sell, they could do some footwork and go sell it on themselves, but they're just not there mentally because it's not the life they've lived. So, what's your general rule of thumb to making sure that the people you deal with are taken care of? It's
definitely just being, this is anything door to door. Like I feel like you see it a lot. Unfortunately, there's people that don't treat homeowners well. Whether it's like in solar, I see it. You know, they're not sizing the system right, whatever it is. But when it comes to foreclosure, you know, the worst case scenario is foreclosure. Like if they don't and a homeowner doesn't realize that. If they get foreclosed on, they're having 7 to 10 years of a nightmare on their credit. They're getting kicked out of the house. They're getting no money. It's a mess. They can't go get qualified anywhere else. So it's really just helping them, one, get enough money in their pocket to relocate. We'll give them a lease back for a little bit to help them move. I almost always pay for the moving truck because they're so worried about where am I going to go next. Sometimes one of our last deals, a homeowner made like $90,000. And it was like at first she wanted to stay, and then she realized I can get $100,000 almost out of this, and you can help me move and, you know, pack up all my stuff for me. Like she's an old lady with, you know, she can't pack up a whole house she's been living in for 50 years.
Right.
So it's just figuring out like what their hot buttons are, what they're really concerned about. Sometimes it's not even the money. It's like, well, where am I going to go next? Or how am I going to get this move? So just figuring out that and then making sure that you're taking care of them on that end.
Okay. So walk me through, that second deal, you get it done, and then there's probably a chunk of deals, 8, 10, 15 deals where you're just learning a ton. What were some of the eye-opening, and I'm going to ask you about the biggest misses also, but what were some of the eye-opening lessons in deal like 2 through 15, 2 through 20?
I think it's realizing, because I was pretty high in the sky with that, right? I'm like, I just gave 2 deals, 55,000. That's what I also want to reiterate to people is like, the grass is always greener doing something else. Like, if I can make 35,000 on this deal. And then I did the next one where, I got it under contract. It was actually from someone brought it to me from cold calling, and it was a subject to deal. So we had to catch up his payments and then take it over. We were giving him 5,000. There was a potential to make a bunch of money, but then last minute, title work happens. A buyer fell through at the end. We ended up only making, $4,000 or $5,000 on the deal, and it happened at the buzzer. But it's like, there's so many issues that can come up when someone's in foreclosure. They inherited the property. Someone needs a sign that isn't cooperating. There's a tax lien that pops up. There's, child support lien. There's all this other stuff that can happen, and the deal could blow up like that, right? And that 30 grand you thought you were making that month, didn't go through, and now you got to go hunt for another one that might have issues too. So
right. And how long does it take from first contact? Yeah, I mean, are we closing one touch close on these, or coming back?
I'd say with coming from door to door, I definitely am always going to try and do the same day. So in that situation, on 2 of those, one was like the set appointment, one was back. I've done plenty of deals where I just walked in and closed the deal right there, and just like I would with solar or alarms. And a lot of times they're not wanting to sell, and they're adamant they're going to have it fixed or caught up or whatever the case is. So I'm just reaching out to them every other day and just texting them. And then in 2 weeks, they didn't get it solved, and now they're giving me a call. So it's a big follow-up game on a lot of them. Okay.
All right. So you go into, you do these flips, right? There are some probably you're going to look at and go, hey, this is probably a keeper, or this is, I could do something more with this. So walk us through, those other options or the other kind of deals you've done. So you get these things in pre-foreclosure. You don't have a huge network. It's not like you can call that guy every time, right? Mm-hmm. And I got another one, and unless you got lucky and found a whale, right? But you're going to be limited to the number of deals you can flip if you don't have a wholesale network. So what are some other things you've done with these homes you have found?
Yep, we do. We always like to look at different exit strategies, which we've learned a ton over the past year and a half. But if they have a low interest rate, I can, they don't have as much equity. That's when I'm going to take over their mortgage payment, buy the house, like subject to that existing mortgage. And I'm going to try and hold that as a rental property.
Does the bank need to qualify that?
No. So subject to is different. It's not an assumable loan. So you could go to the bank and try to go through an assumption, which takes, just like qualifying for anything else, it takes a long time. Subject to, you have to work with specific title companies, attorneys that draft the paperwork, because typically when you buy a house, they pay off the note that was underlying, right? So subject to, you're basically saying, hey, the only reason you get these deals is because the seller has to sell this way, right? You're never going to find this on the market, but you're taking the deed and the title, so you own the house, but the note remains in the seller's name. They know that, they're willing to do that. We're not notifying the lender. The payment's being made through a servicing company. So the bank's happy, they're getting their payment every month. The seller's happy because it stopped their foreclosure. They don't have to pay for the mortgage anymore. It actually continues to improve their credit. And then now I have a 2, 3, 4% interest rate that I'm going to go rent out for $400, $500, $600 more a month. So those are the ones we want to hold on to if we can. But you could always wholesale it too if you don't have the capital or you don't have the partners to do it.
And the capital to do that, it sounds like there's no capital.
So it depends. So for example, my first rental property I bought this way was actually a fourplex, which is pretty crazy. It was from a for sale by owner website that my brother called, but he was 25 grand behind on the mortgage and he had a 3% interest rate. So he was trying to house hack it, but he couldn't come up with payments anymore. And we just caught up his 25,000. We gave him 5 grand, and then we took over his $1,900 a month payment, but we rent it for all 4 units for $900.
Why were you able to cover the rent, and why wasn't he?
So he was trying to put his money into a trucking business. He wasn't treating, he got 2 of them rented out. One was vacant because he didn't update it, and he was living the other one. And he put all of his money towards, he was basically collecting the rent and trying to use it to start this business, and wasn't using it to pay the mortgage. So once we got him, we bought it, took over those payments, then we got it all fixed up and leased out. But 2 of them came with tenants already, so we just had to put 2 more.
But he left. He moved out. He rented the one that was vacant, and so all in, it sounded like it was like 25 grand and
probably 30 because you got closing costs of 25, 5 to him, closing costs of like 34. And then we partnered with a lady that lives this was in College Station. So we partnered with her. She brought half the capital. But there's a ton of ways to get into it with no money. But realistically, if you're buying a house that way, right, that would be the capital, right? It's not a normal down payment. We're having to catch up what they're behind, whatever you're negotiating to them, and then the closing costs.
And then the subject to is just a legal document that says you'll continue to pay the. Now in that, just a great question. In that subject to, are there clauses where if you fall behind, they can recoup the home?
Yep, absolutely. Because that's the biggest question people ask. Granted, they didn't have another option really. They can't sell it on the market, or they're about to be foreclosed on, or maybe the house isn't in good shape. But yeah, you put a promissory note at title if you're doing it correctly, to where if you don't pay, they can foreclose on you, or you can deed the house back to them. And I tell them that it's like, well, let's say in 5 years, I've made improvements to this property. It's appreciated a ton, and now I don't make a payment. You're going to get a house back that is worth, 200 grand more with all the improvements I've made to it.
So is there laws around how many of these homes you can have subject to? Like there are laws on how many rental property. At least it used to be.
Like when you go to get a bank loan.
Yeah, it used to be you can only get so many bank loans if you have to set up your. I don't know if you have to get an LLC or something, but as an individual bank loan, there was a number of bank loans you can only have, and that's changed over the years, and I'm not up to speed on it. But is there a guideline or a law on how many subject to properties you can have out there?
No, it's pretty crazy. That's why I found this, because I was trying to figure out how to scale it. One, as a 1099, rep that doesn't show. I pretty much write off all my income if I can. But yeah, it's not like you're not going to a bank to qualify, so you're leaving that existing mortgage in place. So until you sell or refinance, that seller's name is on the mortgage. But we set up a servicing company that facilitates the payment. So after 12 months, if they want to go buy a house, they can show, similar to whenever you're renting out a property, that the debt's being serviced.
So talk a little bit about a servicing company, because I just made an assumption the first time you said it, but a servicing company is actually a company in place to handle situations just like this?
Yep. Yeah, we pay them $40. You don't have to do this, right? But we pay them $45 a month to take it out of my account, log into their mortgage, and make the payment. And then the benefit to the seller and why you want to do it is, one, you don't have to think about it, but as it's being serviced for 12 months, when they do go to buy another house, it helps them a ton, because they can show with those payments being made every single month that they can get it removed from their debt to income ratio or whatever the case is.
When and if is there advantage to assume that loan
instead of buying it?
I mean, hypothetically, you can get something with a decent amount of time left on the loan. Sure, it's 3% or a low rate, but is there ever an advantage 5 years in, you're deciding to hold on to this because it's in the right spot, it's great Airbnb or great rental? Is there ever an advantage to just take it out of,
like, refinance it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily refinance it, but you just assume the note. Is there ever an advantage to assume
put your name on the note?
Yeah.
I mean, it completely depends on your situation. I'll
give you an example. Let's say you're looking for a much bigger deal. Right. And you need a personal financial statement. How does let's say you buy a home for $100,000. You may not know this, and so maybe right. I had my bank called me today and was like, we need to update your PFS, and I was like, okay, it's like I hate doing that. But let's say I got a small business loan for a couple franchises I own, and so they need to verify my personal financial statement. Well, I own the home by a piece of paper, but the loan's not in my name. So I don't know if I'm asking you, because I don't know if the bank is going to look at that document that I have that says I own the home, but it has that clause. If I miss a payment, I can be foreclosed on. So the equity wouldn't be able to go to the bank. It'd go back to the original homeowner, right? So I'm just thinking in my mind, is there ever a situation where I want to make sure that all my assets are in my name? So my personal finance, because if there's $100,000 in equity in there, let's say the market goes crazy and there's $300,000 in equity in a house you bought for $150,000. And if you miss one payment, the servicing company forgets a payment, something happens. If the wording is in there that they could actually take the home back, I would imagine that there's an opportunity there to put the loan in your name. I mean, has this ever come up?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I think the way I see it is just like any other bank. So it's not necessarily like, oh, you're 10 days late, they're going to take the asset back, because you could just catch up on it, and that homeowner probably is long gone somewhere and doesn't even thinking about it. But just like when you miss a payment with a normal bank, right? But it is cool when I do my taxes, if you go look up on the county records of all the properties I bought this way, it says my LLC. I'm the owner. I get the tax benefits. I get the depreciation. And then my mailing address is now with the servicing company. So if I'm going to sell, I'm the one getting the check, right, of all that equity. So one property.
So the document makes you the official owner.
Yep. Yeah, because whoever has the title and the deed of the house is the owner. So they have that mortgage in place, but I'm the one that owns that.
Is the original homeowner in first position?
Yep.
Okay, so this is where the bank would be like, we need to be in first position. So at least something to bring up for your masterminds is you get $4 or $5 million under management this way, and you're not in first position, and then you want to go buy a warehouse or a 200 unit apartment complex, and you think you have all this asset, but the bank would see every one of those individuals in first position, and if you default, they can't use it. They can't. That's not collateral to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. That'd be a one I probably need to go deeper into. But yeah, I know whenever I do, because I've looked this up too, because I've never had to refinance yet. I've only owned these for a year or two.
Right.
So I've had no need to. But when I'm sitting at a 3% rate, it's kind of hard to justify because I don't think we're going to get back down to that.
Right.
Until I want to sell or refinance, I'm probably not going to do that until I'm like, okay, I have $300,000 in equity in this property, and now I'm going to refinance it out, or I'm going to sell, and that obviously I'm getting that equity. But yeah, when I look at what you're talking about as far as like,
if you're trying to if you're going to try to leverage your entire portfolio on all the equity in it to go do a bigger deal,
right? The
banks aren't going to, if they're can't be in first position on those properties, they're not going to allow you.
Right.
Yeah.
That does make sense.
Cool.
But
all right, we both learned something.
Yeah.
I'm making an assumption here, but just having to deal with this in the last year, arm wrestling for first and second position over stupid stuff was
kind of for like collateral, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, like the property. In my case, I own a golf simulator franchise, right? And so the bank wanted to be in first position on the. I mean, they're like it's like $150,000 of simulators, right? And so the bank wants to be in first position. But the landlord also wants to protect their lease, so they were in first position. We almost lost the deal because the landlord wouldn't give up first position, even though I had a personally guarantee on the. They wanted my personal guarantee of my personal assets, and they wanted to be in first position all assets inside the building on an SBA loan, right? Wow. And so we had this huge it was like I had to bring in like free third-party attorneys to mediate. It was so stupid. But having done that, when I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, this is fantastic. You're making great money. You're putting yourself in a position. But if you ever wanted to make a big move and you could get a deal to the finish line ready to go, and then the bank's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not in first position, and you lose the deal.
Right.
So, all right, let's move past it. So some of these homes you flip to an investor. Some of these homes you keep when you can get low rates. I'm assuming you flip some of these.
Yep.
Right. The nightmares out there I'm sure you mentioned bigger pockets earlier. The nightmare out there of people not knowing what the hell they're doing when they're flipping. The first one you did, I mean, that guy knew exactly what the property was worth, and you thought you were going to lose money on it. Mm-hmm. You have to get an education on what a property is worth in a zip code, what the improvements are going to do to that property value. That's not easy. It takes a while. So how did you learn that piece to decide what makes a good flip and what makes a good wholesale and what to walk away from?
You quickly start learning as you just start analyzing more and more deals, right? Just like anything else. But Texas is a little different because it's a non-disclosure state. So we actually can't see what the properties have sold around it at unless you're going on the MLS with a realtor, which we have access to from some people on our network. But you know what it's worth. I now figure out, okay, buyers are buying at about 75 or 80% of that value minus the repair costs. So essentially what I'm trying to do if I'm a wholesaling or negotiating is I know I want to get it at that after repair number, about 60% of it minus repairs. And then I know I'm going to make money because I know buyers are buying it at 70, 80% of that minus repairs. So that's what I'm figuring out. And I quickly.
Yeah, but you're throwing away after repair number like you're a contractor. like I just called my contractor. I'm like, hey, I'm looking at a gray shell. How much more is it going to be to build out than this last one we did? And he's like, well, it depends. I'm like, come on, man. Yeah. My son's football coach. What's the numbers? Like, it's impossible to tell. Like the costs are.
They vary.
I'm assuming you don't have 10 years of contracting under your where you can go in and look at that. So how do you decide bathroom costs, kitchen costs, flooring costs?
That's a great question. I think that's one of the things that people get like analysis paralysis, I guess what people say. I didn't know anything about repairs. I knew what the value of houses are, right? Because I can figure out what houses around there have sold for, same size. And then generally I can do a, small, average, or big rehab. So I see it's 1,200 square feet. I just multiply it by like $35 a square foot. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, that's going to cover it if I'm getting it at 60% minus $30 or $40 a square foot.
Are you getting these inspected at all? Are you looking for foundational
Once we get them under contract, the buyer's going to want to know that. So we're going and getting pictures. We're putting the age of like the roof, the foundation, whatever we can, right? At the end of the day, the buyer's going to walk through it and they're going to make their decision. So, but yeah, at the beginning, I still don't know. I'm not a contractor. I barely do any flips.
Are you paying for any inspections?
Not really, no.
So
unless we're buying the house, then I would.
So you get it under contract, and then you're going to flip it. At that point, the buyer has an inspection, and you're going to learn exactly what the buyer's learning at the same time. So if the foundation's cracked, the buyer's like, the foundation's cracked, I'm out. Your contract can expire, right? So you're not on the hook. Am I understanding that right?
Yep. So when we get a deal under contract, this is why wholesaling, you have no risk. So flipping is where you can really lose your shirt because you're actually putting up the capital. But we get a deal under contract. I know I'll put on there, I have 60 days or until the foreclosure date to find a buyer.
Yep.
And during that time, I'm going to take pictures. I've probably either been in the house or a partner has the next day. I'm getting pictures of the roof, the foundation, the AC. So I have a good idea, but I'm not a contractor. And then we put it all out there with pictures. We tell them the price we're asking for. They walk through and they'll do their own due diligence.
Have you walked from a deal because of what was found after a buyer placed an offer and they came and inspected? Have you walked from a deal?
If we have it under contract at a good price, multiple buyers will walk through.
But you haven't found something that was so catastrophic where you're like, well, I'm going to let this one expire.
Oh yeah. Sometimes we have to go back to the seller and be like, hey, like with how much you owe and how much this house needs to be repaired, there is no deal. Like no one will buy this for to cover your payoff.
Right.
And then we'll refer a short sale or do something to help them stop the foreclosure. But yeah, that happens a decent amount where it's just they owe too much and the house has way too much repairs.
So you're just trying to get as many homes under contract as you can at a price that benefits the homeowner, and then the market will tell you if it's a keep, a flip, or just a wholesale deal.
Yeah. You also want to be careful about that though, because there's so many people that come in here and they get a deal under contract, but they don't know their numbers. Now they're telling this homeowner that they can buy it at this number, but realistically, I know right off the bat, no buyer is going to buy it at that price or more. So now that homeowner's kind of just dragged through the sand for like.
And you don't want to waste your time. So
right. You're wasting their time too, because it's kind of crappy situation. If you told them, we see it all the time. Like I know I need to get this deal under contract at 200,000 or less, but some other person's calling them, telling them they can offer 250. And I know for a fact that's a wholesaler that's trying to flip it, but no one's going to buy it for 250. So it puts a little bad taste, and you got to walk them through why that won't work with the numbers. But yeah, you want to make sure if you're getting under contract that like someone's going to buy it for more.
Right.
So that's part of the learning experience, but it happens. Stuff comes up at the end and you're like, we had to adjust. So.
Okay. Now I know just because of the industry, you start, not knocking doors, not selling solar, start showing Instagram that you're into real estate and you're making money. And then people's like, dude, Ben, what are you doing, man? Like, are you getting those phone calls or?
Yes, I do quite a bit. We love helping people get deals. I think another thing I wanted to reiterate too, because I've had that with managers or people in the past where we don't have any desire. I don't have like a door-to-door team, right? So it's not like we have the bandwidth to take on reps or do any of that. But I think it is cool to show people how every day you're coming across deals. Like, that neighborhood better than anyone else. And if they have that tool in their tool belt, it's a huge asset, because I've gotten deals from people where they just realize they're knocking for solar and they know I'm the real estate guy. And they're like, hey, this person just passed away. The house is vacant. A family needs to sell it ASAP. And then we get the deal done.
Or at the closing table, they're like, I can't buy solar. I can't buy this. I'm 9 months behind on my mortgage payment.
That has happened 2 weeks ago. A guy was in Oklahoma City doing a blitz and he's trying to get solar. The guy was in bankruptcy, failed the credit application, and he kept in touch with them. He didn't know until I started chatting with him. He's like immediately called 2 other past, homeowners. We got him on the phone and we're working to make a deal right now to take over. So we'd catch up his payments, take over that. He's like a 3% interest rate, $900 a month. So it could be a really cool deal. But yeah, situations like that all the time that you're running into.
I know people who are this far deep in the podcast are immediately thinking, you don't need the leads. It sounds like if you want to go, you have an unlimited skill set to go knock doors. You can go find your own. And so people are like, well, I got this customer, like, Maybe it'll be a 50-50 solar split, but you don't need that business, right? So what do you do when somebody calls and has a homeowner? Are you giving them a standard, cookie cutter referral fee, or if they want, because you're dealing with serial entrepreneurs that are always going to look to
get out of it?
Take you to the closing table, but you don't need them.
We love getting deals with people just because it's fun. Like, it's like when you start with solar or alarms or anything, when you start training people and they start to see that it can be done, it's a lot more, it feels a lot better, than just closing another deal yourself. Obviously, we're happy to go make deals with people, but we do get busy. We're paying for other ads now. We're doing, we have people cold calling, text messages, but door knocking is free and still gets the best deals. So we continue to do it, or we have people bring us deals. So if it's a good deal, we'll happily split it with you. We're starting to build out more bandwidth to partner with people. But yeah, it just depends. Some people, they want to figure it out all themselves. But I think at the beginning, it's hard to do that because there's so much little nuances to it. So, right. We're happy to partner with people. It's just, we got to see if the deal is worth it, kind of.
So I joke all the time that the most popular course that you can buy online is a course on how you can make a course.
Yep.
Right. Meaning anytime, somebody figures out a way to do something, then they want to find a way to monetize that skill set. And then they go make a course on how to do what they want to do. And, if it's the right kind of course, there's still enough margin left on the bone to pay for the education, as well as then go take that education and go. I'm also a big fan of everything needs to be paid forward. Where you either got to pay for the education, right? And sometimes you pay for the education by losing. Mm-hmm. I haven't played in a while because of my kids in sports, but I played a lot of poker in my life, like a lot. And it's enjoyable. Somebody asked me yesterday at our golf tournament, what do you do for fun? And I almost said play poker, but I hadn't played in 7 months, right? I get to be a dad. That's my fun. But I paid thousands and thousands and thousands. I started playing poker before the WSOP boom, right? So I'm at the table getting my education. I'm getting fleeced by the 70-year-old who's been playing for 50 years to get my education. So I understand that in the masterminds that I join, when I write a check, I'm taking away the time it takes to learn. It's still going to cost me the same, if not more, because when you're paying a premium, you're paying to buy that time back as well as get the education. But you can never replace experience. You still have to have texture in the home, at the table, closing the deal, doing the contracts. Mm-hmm. Nothing can replace that texture, but you can pay to play to avoid the time it takes to, there's you can probably list 50 things that don't do these 50 things, and you don't even need to know why not to do them, that you can help and save people for, right? So where did you go, or what did you pay, or how did you get that education to speed up that process? Because you get your teeth kicked in and be months and months and months getting this education. And by the time you get there, you don't have the heart to go anymore, even though you have all the knowledge.
Right.
How did you speed up that?
It's simply investing in myself. I think it sounds so cliche, and I hear it all the time. And I didn't really know. Sam's probably the first thing I ever invested in. I listened to this podcast over and over, and then got into solar after transitioning from alarms. I'm like, crap, what can I do to speed this up? So I immediately got the solar D2DU and just started sitting there. I probably found only 2 people that I liked, and I just studied it like crazy, right, and wrote it down. But same thing with real estate. It was like, okay, if I can figure out how to buy these properties or make this happen quicker, I don't have a ton of time. I'm about to start next summer with solar. I just wanted to figure it out. So I probably spent $60,000 over the course of the last year just on mentorships and education. Some of it's just learning, subject to stuff, creative finance. Some of it was wholesaling, marketing strategies, what we're doing to automate more of the business, different things all across the board that just happen over and over, where I'm like, okay, I can get my time back or that money back in one deal or in 3 months after doing X thing.
So there's a couple of types of people listening, right? One is people who have more money than sense, right? Mm-hmm. Where they go out in this industry and they go make $500,000 and go, hey, what's 15 grand? I can just go knock 5 doors tomorrow. And so they just throw money at it, but they're not committed, right? They're not making every call. They're not joining, they're not doing the work. Mm-hmm. So they have the money and they think the money by paying, they're going to get the knowledge, but they don't do the work. And then there's people, I think I classify myself, that have the money to join a bunch of masterminds, but I'm like, The last one I joined, I probably stalked the guy for like 4 months, right?
Vetted it like crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I just researched and learned, and it was like $7,500 or something. It wasn't even a lot, right? But I was like, I'm not just, gonna stroke a guy a check. Because when I was young, I don't know how many times I wrote $10,000 checks or swiped a card and then realized I didn't have the time to invest.
Yep.
So I needed to prove to myself in this last one that this is something I really want to do. This is something I can put into around my day job, around my job as a husband, around my job as a dad. And after 3 months of stalking this guy and doing the work and watching all his free content, I'm like, all right, this is something I've committed my time to, because that's far more valuable to me than my money. So when you have people call you, right, and they do, and there are those who are, just tell me what to do, man, and you can sense that they're just looking for the quick hit. And then there's the one that you can like almost look into their eye and go, it's in their soul, right? I'm assuming you've felt this already.
They're sitting right here in the room with me, even though you might not be able to see them on camera, but we made a whole trip out of it. But I've had so many people reach out, which is cool because I think we got a lot of our first deals just by helping people show what to run into and then having them bring us the lead. Kind of copied like the solar setter model. But yeah, Jackson, Peter sitting right here. I mean, 20-year-old kids that, paid to be in mentorships or groups that I'm in. And I'm like, you paid. Yeah, you're 20 years old. What are you doing? So immediately I realized like they're invested, but then they call me asking for tips. And I was like, okay, just come out with me. And I can tell, when someone's like, I'm going to figure this out and they're a closer. I say a closer, you don't have to maybe be a closer, but they're invested because I think paying the money made them invested, but it's also like they have some goal in the future. They're not just, well,
at that age, when you spend that kind of money, I don't care. Yeah. You're like, holy shit, I spent that kind of money. I better get some value out of it. Right. But you get some people who are going to listen to this that, have millions in the bank and they're like, oh, this sounds great. I could flip or I could do that. I'm knocking every day anyway. Yet they're just going to throw a bunch of money at it. And then they realize, it was just kind of hot.
Right. It's just like anything else. When you first door knocked, I talked about this when I was in recruiting guys to solar, is like, don't expect a paycheck for the first 2 months if you're working hard, because now you get some deals, some might fall through, then they're installing. So it's the same thing with real estate. Is like, if someone wants to work with me or do that, I almost like pull back so hard at the beginning because so many people see the stuff they see on Instagram, the big checks, the $20,000, $50,000, but didn't realize how much work it took to get there. And just consistent, like door knocking, we're calling, we're putting notes on doors, we're doing Facebook ad, we're doing all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't just come like that just because you know how to sell. And then if you only put a week of action in, you're not going to get a deal.
That's right.
2 weeks or even a month. So yeah, you have to have the time set aside for sure.
So hey, we did a really good job not making this a 30-minute infomercial for you. I think we provided some really good value. That's what we want to do here at D2Ds. We want to give value to those who are knocking doors and those who are in the industry. And so we appreciate you for joining. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
Probably Instagram. Just benjensen.rei, real estate investing.
We are in Utah. We have all the vowels in there.
Yeah, so it's all EN, so BENJENSEN.
Okay, Ben Jensen on Instagram.
.REI. So that just stands for real estate investing. It's kind of what we've started to brand REI closers, a little bit of our YouTube and podcast.
And I know I made a joke about the easiest course to find online is how to make a course. You guys do have content that you do sell some way, and it sounds like you have a masterclass of network as well. So if you guys are interested in wholesaling, flipping, or owning, feel free to reach out to Ben. Now, I do want to take an opportunity here to find out. So you invested in yourself and got, sounds like DDDU Solar, right? Were you the guy that just watched all the content at once? Were you watched a few hours, got what you needed, and then you went out and sold? Or were you kind of like an hour every day kind of guy?
I was an hour every day for the podcast, all through Vivint. Like, I was, as much as I could listen to it, it's more mindset stuff. You pick up, little things here and there that I'm like, oh, that's perfect. But that was consistently for that first year. And then once I transitioned to solar, got D2DU, I think I was more of I found the one I liked and I immediately implemented it. I think it was just Michael O'Donnell.
Yeah, sure. That's what
I went in there, wrote down the whole thing, grabbed a few good pieces and literally implemented the next week and closed the deal. And I was like, all right,
okay.
I don't know if I even went back to the videos,
I was like, do you even remember what you paid for D2DU?
Probably like $2,000 or $1,000. I don't know.
It's like $1,200, yeah. Right? And did you, 50x or it's probably way more than that.
I wasn't like I'd say I was one of a top producer, not like a huge guy throwing in 100 installs, but I think I installed 35 deals in 6-7 months. And, it's like one deal, you make that back.
So $1,200 well spent.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So if you haven't checked out D2DU and you're in the space, there's your live testimonial, how a $1,200 investment in door-to-door created a skill set to sell solar, a skill set to go find pre-foreclosed deals that either flipped, owned, or wholesaled them. It's a fantastic story. We both went on that one. Ben Jensen, .rei on Instagram. Thanks for coming in today. It was a great conversation.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No problem.